We're diving into one of the most mysterious, misunderstood, and spiritually loaded stories in the entire Bible, the story of King Solomon's first wife, the woman who opened the door to his heart, and ultimately opened the door to his downfall. Most people know Solomon for his wisdom, his wealth, his temple, his proverbs, but very few know the deeper story behind the question, who was Solomon's first wife, and why does her story still speak to us today? We're going to explore where she came from, why Solomon married her, how her influence changed the course of his destiny, how Solomon ended up with 700 wives and 300 concubines, why the wisest man in history built altars to idols, how she likely died, and why this ancient story still carries modern disguises that believers must recognize today. Before we talk about the temple he built or even the mistakes that later swallowed his destiny, we have to start with a woman, a mysterious woman, a woman whose name Scripture never mentions. Yet her presence shaped the future of a king and the spiritual direction of a nation. Most people read right past her. Most have never stopped to ask, who was Solomon's first wife? Where did she come from? And why does her story matter so much? Let's go back to the beginning of Solomon's reign. Solomon is young, possibly in his early 20s. The throne of Israel is newly placed on his shoulders. The enemies that once surrounded his father David have been subdued. The kingdom is finally stable, peaceful, and united. And in this early season of peace, the Bible describes Solomon with a moving simplicity. Solomon loved the Lord. 1 Kings 3:3. Imagine that. A king whose heart burns for God, a king who starts well, a king who wants to please the Lord, continue David's legacy, and build a nation centered around worship. Solomon prayed. Solomon sacrificed. Solomon sought God wholeheartedly. But at the same time, another desire was rising in his heart. The desire for strategic alliances, international influence, and political stability. And that's where she enters the story. Enter the princess, daughter of Pharaoh. The first woman Solomon marries is not an Israelite. She is not a woman from his tribe. She is not a follower of Yahweh. She is the daughter of the king of Egypt. Solomon made a treaty with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter. 1 Kings 3:1. Now pause and let that sink in. Egypt was not some small neighboring village. Egypt was the global superpower of the ancient world. Its architecture towered over the earth. Its wealth was unmatched. Its armies were feared. Its gods were numerous. And Pharaoh, Egypt's king, was treated as a god on earth. To receive Pharaoh's daughter was not just a marriage, it was a statement. For centuries, pharaohs rarely allowed their daughters to marry outside their empire. It was unheard of. It meant that Egypt saw Israel, little Israel, as a rising force worth allying with. So when Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter, it was more than romance. It was politics, it was strategy, it was prestige, it was recognition, it was international respect. But spiritually, it was the first crack in the foundation. A woman shrouded in royal mystery. We don't know her name. We don't know her voice. We don't know her personality, but we do know her world. She grew up surrounded by gold, power, and idols. She was raised in a palace lined with images of Ra, the sun god Isis, goddess of magic Horus, the falcon god Hathor, goddess of fertility Osiris, god of the dead. She came from a culture where gods were carved, represented, carried, bathed, and worshipped daily. Her worldview was shaped by temples, rituals, and gods that Israel was commanded to never imitate. When Solomon brought her into Jerusalem, he wasn't just bringing a wife. He was bringing an entire worldview, an entire culture, an entire spiritual atmosphere into the land. A woman with thousands of years of Egyptian tradition behind her. A princess carrying the identity of a people Israel had once been enslaved under. She was beautiful, she was elegant, she was powerful, she was cultured, and she was foreign. The marriage that looked smart, but carried a hidden weight. From a political perspective, the marriage was brilliant. But spiritually, it was disobedient. God had already warned Israel, especially Israel's leaders, do not intermarry with them because they will turn your hearts toward their gods. Deuteronomy 7:3-4. This wasn't racism. This wasn't nationalism. This wasn't isolationism. This was spiritual protection. God knew something. No matter how strong a man is, the heart can be turned by intimacy. The heart can be shaped by love. The heart can be influenced by the one you marry. Solomon's marriage to Pharaoh's daughter wasn't a big sin at the time. It didn't destroy him instantly. It didn't collapse the kingdom overnight, but it planted a seed of compromise, a seed of blended culture, a seed that would grow into something Solomon could not control. Because compromise rarely looks dangerous in the beginning. It looks strategic, it looks wise, it looks convenient, it looks harmless. But the enemy always enters through an open door. And for Solomon, Pharaoh's daughter was that door. Solomon loved her enough, or honored her enough, to build her a separate palace. Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter up from the city of David to the house he built for her. 2 Chronicles 8:11. Because her presence wasn't holy enough to dwell near the ark. That's profound. Solomon knew she carried spiritual residue. He knew her background clashed with God's holiness. He knew their worlds didn't mix. But instead of releasing the relationship, he accommodated it. He adjusted. He made space. He reorganized. He relocated her. He made exceptions. Family, hear this. When we make space for what God never approved, we always end up reorganizing our spiritual priorities to fit it. Solomon didn't reject God. He simply created a system where God and compromise could coexist, at least for a while. Why her story matters today, she is not just an ancient princess. She represents something very real today. Relationships that look good but weaken your faith. Alliances that appear smart but cost you spiritually. Decisions that seem harmless but carry hidden consequences. Partnerships that bring influence but drain your conviction. Compromises that begin small but grow large. Solomon's first wife is more than history. She is a powerful symbol of how the enemy packages influence. Beautiful but spiritually dangerous. Sophisticated but compromising. Strategic but costly. And the tragedy is this. Solomon's entire downfall began not with 700 wives, not with idols, not with altars, but with one woman, one choice, one compromise, his first wife. The mystery of this unnamed princess is not in her identity, but in her influence. Her entrance into Solomon's life marks the moment where wisdom met temptation, and the king who loved God began a slow, subtle drift into mixture, a drift that eventually reshaped a kingdom.